Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm One Man Tea Party, and today I'm here to talk about kart races. At least, Gameboy Advance kart races. These are a special breed of games that I hold close to my heart, and despite their many issues, I think they're still impressive even today. Kart races, at least in the traditional sense, have been around since 1992 with the release of Super Mario Kart. Other racing games in various forms had existed before then, like the Sega game Power Drift, which is closest to what we call a kart game before the genesis of the genre. Square's Rad Racer in 1987 made its mark as well, though the racer genre as a whole would build up even more steam in the 90s with releases like Sega Rally and Ridge Racer storming the market. What we talk about nowadays with kart races, however, play off the formula that started with Super Mario Kart. Super Mario Kart started its life as an attempt to convert the fast-paced racing gameplay of F-Zero into a multiplayer game. F-Zero had come out in 1990 as a launch title for the Super Famicom, or SNES, in the West, and had made waves upon its release. The Super Famicom prided itself on beautiful 16-bit graphics, especially with its Mode 7 graphics option that allowed the ability to make a faux 3D effect. Mode 7 let developers take a flat bitmap image and manipulate it in various ways, such as stretching it or rotating it. The rotation was the important thing for kart races, meaning that the actual race courses the players would be racing on could rotate to the movements of the players' inputs, giving the ability to seamlessly navigate levels in a way that hadn't been possible before then. It's important to note this was only applicable on backgrounds. Sprites and other such things were still reliant on good old 2D. When F-Zero released and wowed people with its impressive graphics and gameplay, Nintendo wanted to capitalize on that and improve upon their previous success. Multiplayer was the name of the game, and F-Zero was a little too fast to utilize it. It didn't lend itself particularly well to being played in split screen. The team came up with an idea of making a game based on racing karts rather than futuristic races, which would mean that it would be slower and easier to access for all audiences. From there, the initial generic Racer Man turned into Mario, and from there the roster expanded into 8 different characters from the Mario games. And that's how the kart racer genre was born. Of course, that's not all though. Each character had their own statistics, which was typical of racing games, though generally they were picked based on the character's own traits. Mario was an all-rounder, Bowser was heavy and fast, and no one played Toad. On top of introducing items which were placed in boxes on the ground and could be collected to attack other players to gain an advantage, the game was simple and easy to play. It had 20 tracks, split up into different cups, which a player would play through in a Grand Prix format, coming on top based on their point total from the races. Time trials and a battle mode were also implemented, giving a few different options for gameplay, racing against the clock or battling friends. Speaking of friends, Mario Kart was most famous for having fantastic multiplayer. By default, the screen was cut in half to show a minimap where you could see where the other races were. When playing with a second person, this became another game screen, allowing a seamless transition to multiplayer action. Of course, this is a little outdated now, as games with split-screen multiplayer generally cut their screen size only when multiplayer is started, though this was a great solution for making it work at a time where such a thing wasn't too common. I'm not a huge fan of Super Mario Kart, mostly due to not having grown up with it, but it's really amazing to see how a genre just sprouted up out of nowhere and took hold instantly, being one of the best-selling games on the SNES and Super Famicom. In the decade after the release of Super Mario Kart, kart races took over, mostly when the 3D-capable systems came out, with the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation getting a flood of mediocre releases. Alongside these, there was another Mario Kart 64, which converted the gameplay of the original into 3D, rather than faking it with Mode 7. Around the same time as Mario Kart 64, Crash Team Racing, Naughty Dog's final Crash game, came out on the PlayStation, bringing its own unique spin to the genre. It had a unique drifting system. You'd go into a slide while holding L1 or R1, and when the bar would go red, you'd press the button you weren't holding. This would enter a little mini boost mode. You could do this 3 times in a row before having to reset that, but it added a lot to the gameplay and made it really complex. Rare also released a game on the Nintendo 64 around the same time. Diddy Kong Racing, a spin-off of the Donkey Kong Country series, featured fast-paced action and transforming vehicles. It was unique as well and an absolute blast to play. These 3 games stood as the pinnacles of kart racing games at the time, each with their own flavor and unique gameplay styles. We'll jump ahead a little bit again to 2001. The Gameboy Advance was about to release, and with that, at least in the handheld world, they were back to square one again. The Gameboy Advance used 16-bit graphics like its ancestor before it, which meant that it was able to do what the SNES did, except it could do it better. Anyway, all of that to say why I hate Mario Kart Super Circuit, and the games that do it better. I'd like to kick it off by saying that, along with not feeling much for Super Mario Kart, I really don't love Mario Kart 64 or Double Dash. They're solid games for sure, but I didn't grow up with them, and going back to them now feels wrong for a lack of a better term. Crash Team Racing and Diddy Kong Racing were my bread and butter, and particularly with CTR, I think that with its remake, Nitro coming out a few years ago, the genre is as good as ever. Crash Team Racing had tight as heck controls, a unique boosting system, and relatively balanced items and tracks. It was a marvel, and it's still an absolute blast to play today. Nitro fueled even more so. After Double Dash though, Mario Kart games finally hit their stride. Mario Kart DS was the first I owned, and the drift system, being where you'd hold the drift button and hit the left and right buttons over and over and over again to get a higher boost, being a super fun system, though easily abused. Every Mario Kart since then I've adored, with 8 being the pinnacle as far as I'm concerned. Every game in between DS and then has either been good or great, and frankly there's a reason why it's the leading series. Saying that, there's one stick in the mud there, and I'd like to talk about it a little bit more. Mario Kart Super Circuit. Super Circuit was released in 2001, towards the end of the first year of the GBA's life. It looks fantastic, the levels are well designed, and it controls well enough, and has absolute bags of content. 40 whole levels, 20 being new and 20 being the original Super Mario Kart tracks. But there's just something so plain about it. It just feels like it exists, for better and for worse. It was made by Intelligent Systems, who developed the Fire Emblem and Paper Mario series, among countless others. In terms of what the game does, it's a Mario Kart game. Where other games in the series always had some new gimmick or gameplay style, Super Circuit is just if you polished up Super Mario Kart a bit and chucked in some 3D sprites. Like I said before, the graphics are fantastic, using what we'd call Mode 7, though the GBA doesn't technically have Mode 7. The colors all pop and it's absolutely one of the better looking kart races on the system, especially against a few others I don't want to talk about. The music is great and the game works as it should do, but as far as I'm concerned that's all it has going for it. When I say I hate it, it's more the fact that it didn't live up to what I expect from the Mario Kart series now. Not evolving it in a major way. I know there's probably more than a few things I'm missing about it, but what matters, at least while I'm standing here screaming about children's video games, is that I don't think it felt right. On the other hand, there's another kart racer, a launch title for the GBA, something Krazy. Konami Krazy Racers is a crazy racing game made by Konami, believe it or not. Back in the days when they made games, not filling the pockets of old drunk Japanese men in pachinko parlors. Really though, Konami Krazy Racers, or Konami Waiwai Racingu in Japanese, was the first kart racing game released for the GBA, being a launch title with the system. It features characters and courses themed to different Konami games, rest in peace Konami, some of which are strange choices. The Mario of the game is Goemon from Goemon and the Mystical Ninja series, one of Konami's longest running franchises. Joining him is Takosuke from Parodius, Dracula from Castlevania, Grey Fox from Metal Gear, Pastel from Twinbee, Power Pro-kun from some baseball series, Moai from Gradius, and finally Nyami from Poppin' Music. These 8 characters make up the core cast of the game, each serving a similar role to characters in Mario Kart. Dracula, for instance, being equivalent to Bowser, having high speed and weight, but low handling. Goemon is an all-rounder and has equal stats, kinda like Mario, normal kart racer stuff. There are 4 secret characters in the game, with 3 of them being unlocked through a pretty cool method. It's not unique, it's similar to Muppet Race Mania and Hot Wheels Turbo Racing, but I think it does a good job of it. On 3 different courses in the game, there are giant crystals hidden in difficult to reach places. Collecting them unlocks the character. There's a final character which is unlocked via time trials, which is totally unlockable with Takosuke. GameFAQs is lying to you! Krazy Race's main mode is called Krazy GP, and is a mostly standard cup race mode. You take part in 4 races, each on different levels themed to different Konami games. The Land of Mystical Ninjas, a racetrack in the sky, a lava lake with Castlevania hanging in the background, and space! Honestly, the game looks pretty darn great for a launch title, though it isn't by any means the prettiest GBA game. The backgrounds are really rich looking, with lots of little details to keep the eyes busy. The character sprites sometimes look a little awkward since they're pressed down into a boxy shape. There are a few small, quote-unquote 3D looking things in the game, but nothing substantial. Like Mario Kart before it also has a battle mode called Bomb Chaser. This involves avoiding the player with the bomb, which is pushed onto someone by crashing into them, until the round ends, at which point it explodes and whoever didn't get hit wins. It's alright for a little bit of extra flavor. The same goes for Chicken, which is a game of chicken where you accelerate down a straight path until deciding to slow down, at which point you slide towards a cliff. Whoever gets closest wins. They're both fun modes, Chicken more so. One other cool thing is that you can collect coins, kinda like Mario Kart, which you can use to buy items from a shop. This will store items for your next race, though you'll never really get enough to buy anything too significant unless you play a lot. The items are pretty standard for a kart racer, with rockets being equivalent to Mario Kart shells, though firing in a burst of 3. There's a homing rocket, a star power-up, which is notable in that it makes a cool little thematic aura appear above a character's head from their series, along with a similar one which speeds you up and makes you invincible. There's lightning which shocks everyone and puts them to a stop for a second, along with a piggy one which turns everyone into little piggies. There's boosts, bombs, and ice which you can leave behind you, along with a mole which digs a hole. Along with this, there's a key which makes you invisible and immune to getting hit by items. When it comes to talking about items in the other games, I really won't be talking too much about them, as they're all much of a muchness. The music is incredible, and though it reuses songs for the same themed levels, they're all bangers. The main theme of the game and the Castlevania theme stand out, though there's not a bad song in it. Along with that, the characters are all voiced, being super cartoony and over the top. The characters themselves are all adorable, and the secret characters, Vic Viper from Gradius, King from Poppin' Music, Abisumaru from Goemon, and Bear Tank from Rakuga Kids sneak into the character selection screen, which is just fantastic. Bear Tank is by far the best character in the game, having the best stats, though as the game plays so well, there's no real wrong choice when playing through it. This is except when unlocking new license grades, which you must do to unlock the other GPs, where some of them will but require you to select a character that's suited to the occasion. Not that that's too bad. Now, all that would mean nothing if the game didn't handle well. The speed and ability to hop and in turn make it feel so fluid and solid. One issue I had with Super Circuit is that it can feel a little bit like you're sliding on ice. But Krazy Racers and the other two games we'll talk about generally feel like you've got a great level of control. Saying that, it's not a perfect game, as none of the games in this video are. As it was a launch title, it's definitely not as good looking as some of the later games on the console, though it does what it can. The time trial mode feels a little secondary, with no staff ghosts to challenge yourself against, and the system it uses for unlocking later GPs, the license system, though really cute and thematic, is bogged down a little by using the last character you used in a normal mode, which can prove problematic for a couple of the challenges. Also, you can't see any of the characters' stats in-game, which means you're just going to get a rough approximation through gameplay to know what sort of character they are. You can look in the instruction manual though to see what they have, but it doesn't account for the secret characters. Outside of those, there's no other faults. So let's take a little bit of a breather. That's Krazy Racers, a stellar kart racer. It fits really nicely into that Mario Kart shaped hole that was left at the GBA's launch. But after Super Circuit released, if you liked Super Circuit more, there'd not really be much of a reason to play Krazy Racers. As much as I adore it, it's most similar to Mario Kart. After Mario Kart Super Circuit released, there were other kart races that followed in its wake, gobbling up those juicy breadcrumbs that were left in its tire tracks. Games like Nicktoons Racing and Sergeant Frog were released afterwards, being inoffensive and just fine, though they both feel super slippery. Sergeant Frog was interesting due to its story mode, but it was more awkward than anything else. Most of the other kart races that released weren't any better either. I won't talk about it in any great length, but let's just say that Krazy Frog Racers and Shrek Swamp Kart Speedway hurt me to an extent that will never fully be known. There was even a Toys to Life racer as well, though due to crippling debt and an irrational fear of Skylanders, I was unable to try it out for this video. Where our quest brings us to now, however, is something else. The next release chronologically, and a stellar example of a kart racer. Crash Nitro Kart, released in 2003. Surprise, surprise, I like a Crash game. In fact, every Crash game on the Gameboy Advance is pretty damn great, outside of the Spyro crossover game. Vicarious visions work magic, and it's an ever-present reminder that the big man always takes the good ones first. Regardless of that, Crash Nitro Kart is a companion game to the home console releases, and in some ways feels the superior version. Where the home console versions are pretty damn good in their own rights, I feel like the GBA version is a little tighter and closer to what I'd want out of a CTR sequel. The game follows the same plot as the console version, where the characters get kidnapped to race in an interplanetary kart championship by Emperor Velo. In adventure mode, you go to different areas, which are themed to the planet you're racing on at the time. You end each area by fighting a boss like in Crash Team Racing, though in Nitro Kart they're the champion of their own planet, which is nice and thematic. The boss fights are great and tough, though a lot of that has to do with rubber banding. Rubber banding is where non-player characters speed up past their usual capabilities, essentially cheating in order to make it a fair race. This isn't a lot of kart races, including Krazy Racers, though I find it at its worst in Nitro Kart, at least in the games we're talking about here. Saying that, the gameplay is super smooth, and although it can feel a little slippery sometimes, it's more often than not solved by exploiting the boost system. It works identically to Crash Team Racing, though instead of pressing the drift button again, you release the A button and press it again when the bar is red to get a little boost. Being able to do it 3 times in a row. It takes a little bit to get used to, but once you got the muscle memory down, it's great. By drifting, you can sort of stay in a straight line and keep your course, as long as you keep it steady. The character selection is split into groups of 3 at the start. Crash, Crunch, and Coco are the good characters, and Cortex, Tiny Tiger, and Engine are the evil characters. There are some other characters like Entrance, Dingodile, and Polar who are the mind-controlled team. After that, there are numerous secret characters, even more than the home console version, with all the bosses being unlockable, along with Nitrous Oxide, Entropy, and Fake Crash. Fake Crash is notable for being unlocked in a similar way to the Krazy Racers characters, being hidden and out of time. You have to go outside of the walls and you'll find him just chilling by the fire, doing his thing. Oh, and I think I forgot a character. Spyro's in it as well. Spyro makes his racing debut over a decade before his Nitro Field appearance. All the boss characters are max stats, making them equally as good. I personally can't figure out what's the best playstyle, so outside of those max characters, I found every character to have their own use. Graphically, it hasn't aged great though. It looks pretty good on a handheld, though it can be a little hard to see things. The courses look a little flat, given that the characters themselves are 3D, or rather 3D sprites a la Donkey Kong Country. The cutscenes for the story mode are hyper-compressed screenshots of the cutscenes from the console version, which look kinda funny. It's fun enough to make up for those faults though. The music is great too, and the characters sort of dancing to the main theme on the main menu always gets me. Performance-wise as well, it runs fantastically, until items or boosts come into the mix. It can get a little choppy when action is happening, but when you're just racing, it's usually perfect. Multiplayer-wise, there's a racing and a battle mode, but I didn't get to test those because I don't have any friends. The time trial mode is solid though, offering a good challenge. Not too much to talk about there, but par for the course as far as I'm concerned. Due to its mechanics and huge cast and really solid courses, I think it's a really great kart racer, especially given the console it's on, and definitely worthy of holding the title Crash Team Racing. Saying that, there's another game, lurking in the mists. Digital mists, perhaps. Of course, it's Digimon Racing. Coming out in 2004, developed by Kryptonite, now owned by EA Games, God rest their souls, Digimon Racing is a strange one. I kind of hate it, and in the same breath, I absolutely love it. If it's alright though, Papa Tea Party would like to stop here for a second, sit you on his lap, and talk about the best mistake I ever made. It was 2004, and little one boy Tea Party was getting ready to go on a flight. My grandpappy said, "T, you can pick a game. Any game you like." Having dug my stinky nose into Total Gamer magazine, I knew what the hottest game on the block was. Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life. You could farm, pet dogs, own a house, make sacrifices to the goddess, meet the love of your life. It was all you could dream about. So of course, knowing I was going to fly and I needed something to do, I took one look at the game of my dreams, spat on the floor and got Digimon Racing instead. Gilmon made me sin that day, and for that I'll never forgive him. Of course it was a good game though, and I got the PS2 version of A Wonderful Life a couple years later, and didn't understand it, so maybe it was the right choice in the end. Digimon Racing is very much what it says it is. When you think of Digimon, you think of Digivolving. Koromon into Agumon into Greymon. This mechanic actually made its way into the game. Since we're already so deep, I won't explain too much about the racing of the game. It's really solid once you get used to it, though turning feels a little too responsive sometimes, which makes you drive into walls a lot. I got over it fairly quickly though, and it was all Gucci. The most important mechanic in the game is Digivolving. The characters you select, their stats being speed, handling, and acceleration, start off in their rookie form for the most part. There's a bar on the right indicating the character's energy. After driving on the black goop on the ground being energy hotspots, allows a Digimon to digivolve, increasing their speed. Filling this bar up further gives access to their special power, which is an ability which sits in the item slot, allowing the character to use a pretty powerful skill. Togemon unleashes an onslaught of needles. Greymon sends off a fire blast that homes in on enemies. And Gatomon confuses enemies. They all range in use depending on the character, but they're all generally pretty good. Taking damage lowers your energy bar, which can de-digivolve you. This sends a character to their in-training form, which slows them down considerably, and makes it difficult to catch up. Saying that, there are generally energy hotspots littered throughout the levels, which means you don't have to stay down for long unless a bad stretch of RNG hits you. The cast is taken from different Digimon shows up until that point, with the latest being Digimon Frontier at the time. The core characters are the original Digidestined Digimon, being Agumon, Gabumon, Palmon, Patamon, Tentamon, Biomon, Salamon, and Gomamon. Goodymon, Vmon, and Gilmon are all unlockable as well. It's funny considering that Vmon and Gilmon are front and center on the English box art. Course-wise, it's actually my favorite of the three games, though with a hitch. The themes are all varied and some of the levels just blew me away. Particularly the caves, with the mine shafts always coming towards you and the jumps and minecarts in the way. Underwater also sticks out, just looking aesthetic as heck, being an underwater research lab with a few cool jumps and road cones to slow you down. I'm pretty sure it's the only level to actually have road cones, which is actually kind of funny. Each level has a certain Digimon appear on it too, which adds a lot to the flavour. It's set on File Island, where the original series was set as well. They're split up into cups as per usual, though this is where the game hits a gigantic wall. The initial cups are great and have a good variety of levels. But after finishing them, you get access to some other cups, which are just the same levels packed into thematic groups such as the Aqua Cup featuring all the water levels. You have to repeat a few levels more than twice, and it gets a little tiring by the end of it. The cups themselves are split up with boss battles though, and these aren't your granny's boss battles. They're closer to Mario Kart DS than anything. You have to go around the arenas and collect item boxes while dodging their attacks and blasting them while they take a break in their onslaught. They're not particularly tough, though the time limit is a little bit tight when trying it for the first time. I remember it gave me a whole lot of issues as a kid. As with the other games, the music is great, though the title theme haunts me to this day. Performance-wise is where the game really takes a hit though. When anything other than pure racing is going on, the game decides to slow down significantly. This leads to whole stretches where you can just be staring at a single digit of FPS, hoping to God that Gatomon drives off a cliff. It's a shame because it actually looks really good. I love the detail in the backgrounds, and the sprite work is really nice. The characters use the same sort of 3D tech as they used in Crash Nitro Kart, but it's a lot clearer and the bosses look great given that they're much bigger than anything else in the game. It makes sense considering it came out towards the end of the GBA's life cycle, though it's just a shame the performance couldn't keep up with it. It has the same gameplay modes as Nitro Kart as well, not having a battle mode. Multiplayer actually supported the wireless adapter for the GBA though, which would have been amazing if I knew anyone else who owned the game. You unlock 2 of the characters by winning every free race and time trial, so they're not optional if you want to unlock everything. The game is a really solid kart racer, though completely let down by the performance and intense turning. It doesn't really have drifting either, which is a bit of a disappointment. I know that Krazy Racers didn't have it either, but the game was just so solid in its feel that it didn't really need it at all. Saying that, I don't regret picking it over Harvest Moon, especially as a huge Digimon fan. Check out the 2020 series if you haven't already, it's a banger. So that leaves us at the end of the GBA's life cycle. It's not a great console for kart races, though as we've explored there are some pretty great options there, things you can only find on the system. The DS after it picked up some slack with Mario Kart DS and a few ports of other games, Digimon Racing included. After that, apart from the occasional Mario Kart release, it was a bit of a drought for the old kart racing genre. Personally, I'd say there wasn't any real competition to Mr. Italy until Sonic and All-Stars Racing appeared in 2010, followed by All-Stars Racing Transformed in 2012. Sumo Digital, who made those games, also worked on Disney Infinity's kart racing mode, which is actually what I'd consider a hidden gem, especially considering you can make your own levels. After that, Team Sonic Racing wasn't quite as good as Transformed, but it's still really good. That just leaves Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, which is what I consider the greatest kart racer of all time. Unfortunately, both Beenox and Sumo Digital have been absorbed into their respective mushy orbs and serve darker masters, though that's not to say the genre is dead. Kart races are strange. They appear for a few years in the spotlight, usually when a Mario Kart game releases, and then they disappear as if they never existed. Up until Chocobo GP releasing this year, I can't remember any other kart races since Nitro Fueled, and Square Enix somehow managed to make Activision look like a charity with that one. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe continues to live on, with the DLC pack recently releasing. 48 new courses over the next 2 years, which is pretty incredible, I think. I just hope that whatever's next, whether it's Mario Kart or something else, can keep the genre fresh, and maybe lessen the gap between those game releases. Now, I've finished my cup of tea, and I think it's time to go. I've been One Man Tea Party. Thanks for watching.